Downtown Venice Walk. This walk does not pretend to cover all the history of Venice and is limited in scope to the area between and around Venice Avenue and Tampa Avenue and between Nokomis Avenue and Harbor Drive. Most of the historic pictures come from the Venice archives, so let's get started. The Venice area was known as Piney Bluffs from a map of 1850 and Horse and Chase 1868, named after a growth of vegetation resembling a horse and buggy at Casey's Pass that sailors used to find the inlet. Frank Heigl created the first post office in the area called Erie, an abstract of the eagle's nest Erie, which was short-lived because of lack of mail volume. In 1888, a post office named Venice was started in the current region of Nokomis, and in 1903, another post office called Laurel was started. In 1910, when Mrs. Bertha Palmer started investing in real estate south of Osprey, she was interested in developing the current Venice area and wanted to use the name Venice. As a requirement for her land purchase, she wanted the railroad to run tracks down to the southern part of her property. In doing this, she moved the Venice post office to the terminus of the railroad. The railroad station, which was once Venice, she named Dundee after Walter Dunn, a retired railroad worker living in the area. That name was rejected by the community, so it was renamed Potter. A 6-year battle was waged to get the name Venice back, but in the end, Mrs. Palmer won, allowing the Potter residents to choose a name from 3 suggested: Verona, Iota, and Nokomis, all offered by railroad workers. Nokomis was the grandmother of Hiawatha, written by Nathaniel Hawthorne. The telegram announcing the move of the Venice post office to the railroad terminus. The sender ACH was no other than Adrian Carr Honoré, Bertha's brother. Perhaps 24 families lived in Venice when the first seaboard train arrived, and eventually a shed-like station appeared. A double set of steps and a wooden partition separated white and black patrons. In 1915, Bertha Palmer and the Sarasota Venice Company were interested in creating a resort at Venice. A plat for a small town in Venice was surveyed by W.M. Tuttle and filed in February of 1915. The plat had 6 streets and 4 blocks with a total of 64 lots. Bertha thought that resorts in Florida were sought after by the few that could afford it for the winter season with sunshine and outdoor activities. She envisioned an attractive resort and sporting center with facilities for shooting, fishing, sea bathing, boating, golf, tennis, riding, and motoring. They wanted the beauties of pine woodlands, sylvan solitudes, vistas over land and water, and songbirds. The Sarasota Venice Company hired Charles Leavitt, a New York planner, to design their visions of Venice. In October 1915, he presented a plan of a Venice stretching from Lemon Bay to Venice Bay with 4 civic centers. Bertha and the Sarasota Venice Company rejected his plan because it was too elaborate and costly. The company's purpose was to be able to sell at a profit and close up its business. Instead, development was started in 1916 of a close-to-nature resort called Eagle Point, which was developed by Mike Evans on 30 acres belonging to the Sarasota Venice Company. The 2-story clubhouse featured a dining room and library. Guests gathered for meals and bridge in the evening. There they breakfasted before heading out for a day of shooting, fishing, or boating. The 2nd story was reserved for bachelor's quarters. 1-story porch-wrapped guest cottages were added in the summer. It was to be a winter's camp where all the pleasures of sports on water and land can be enjoyed by the guests. After the second season, 1917 to 1918 winter, Mike Evans bought the resort from the Sarasota Venice Company. With the First World War starting in Europe and the trouble in Russia, Bertha had her focus on her niece Julia Grant and her husband Prince Michael Cantacuzene, and how to keep them safe. Bertha also had properties in Europe that needed attention. In the meantime, in February of 1917, Dr. Fred Albee, a world-renowned orthopedic surgeon, visited his cousin in the Sarasota area at the Main Colony Resort, which was located near today's Swift and Ashton, and stayed for a week. He viewed the area and enjoyed the fishing. Before he left, he purchased, with his cousin, 112 acres for $11,211 in Nokomis, which they subdivided into 130 lots. In 1921, he built the Pollyanna Inn along Dona Bay and a new asphalt road. In February of 1923, the Albees moved into their new Italian revival home called Point aux Palms, or Palm Point, on the northern shore of Roberts Bay. In August of 1924, Fred Albee bought 1,428 acres of Palmer land in the Venice Nokomis area for $185,000. When Dr. Albee started getting interested in developing Venice, he called in John Nolan, Boston's nationally known city planner, to design a model city. John Nolan's preliminary study of the Venice Nokomis area appeared in 1924. Venice Beach is in the right foreground. Hispaniola Boulevard, today's Venice Avenue, ran from the Seaboard Station to a Gulfside Pavilion and Hotel. Nolan's chief designer, Philip Foster, and designer Justin Hartzog worked on the preliminary plans, which entailed a large civic center. 4 avenues radiated from an open space called Albee Green. Albee decided to make available for the 1924-1925 winter season 400 marketable lots at Bay Point on Dona Bay. Dr. Albee had moved ahead with construction even after he lost 2 steam dredges, but a slump in the real estate market dimmed his enthusiasm for moving forward with his project. Here are 2 letters from Fred Albee to John Nolan. In the first, he is asking for Nolan's opinion about developing Venice Nokomis. By July of 1925, Dr. Albee sold 1,500 acres in what is today's downtown Venice to the BLE, or Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers, for $1 million, most of the amount in mortgages. In Albee's second letter, he tells Nolan of the sale, states that the BLE purchased 25,000 more acres from other parties, and that he recommended Nolan to the BLE to plan the new Venice. The Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers, or BLE, union was started in 1863 to elevate the engineers' social, moral, and intellectual standing, guard their financial interests, and promote their general welfare. In time, a professional journal appeared and an insurance association was formed. In 1925, the BLE Investment Company did an audit on their finances and found the union faced a loss of some $4 million on their investments. They looked for ways to reduce that loss and fell into the Florida land boom trap. They looked over Florida on both coasts and decided on the Venice area because it had a railroad, drivable roads, and a beach. Initially, they were going to buy, subdivide, and sell for profit, but they heard how profitable other cities were in Florida and decided to develop. The BLE's charter did not allow them to take title to land, so they formed the BLE Realty Company. To sell the developed land, they formed the Venice Company. The BLE was willing to spend $1 million a month to develop Venice. The executive officers of the BLE shown in the picture are: center, William Prenter, president; top left, L.G. Griffin, first vice president; Top right, H.B. Dougherty, second vice president. Bottom right, C.E. Lindquist, secretary-treasurer. And bottom left, Albee Johnson, the grand chief engineer. By July 1927, the first 4 of the executive officers listed were fired. George T. Webb was the president of the Venice Company, a VP of the BLE Realty Corporation, and a VP of the Brotherhood Investment Company. The BLE marketed for the flashy rich, ignoring, if not snubbing, their own people. As if an afterthought, George Webb asked John Nolan to design in an area where common engineers could afford to live, Edgewood. As you can see, they hired John Nolan to create a complete city plan, Prentice French for the landscaping, design and planting, and Walker and Gillette Company to regulate the design of the structures, and George A. Fuller Company, Fuller's Army, to build infrastructure and buildings. John Nolan recommended Prentice French as the project's landscape architect. French had earned his MLA at Harvard School of Landscape Architecture. He was related to Daniel C. French, the sculptor of the Lincoln Memorial. French hired 50 employees to organize and plant the landscaping materials. French organized work crews for clearing and preparing landscape sites, established a nursery for plantings and retail sales to businesses and residences, stocked thousands of Italian cypress trees and exotic plants, and supervised planting of citrus and live oaks along Venice Avenue. In the summer of 1927, French married Helen Douglas. She was also a trained landscape architect, a graduate of Cambridge School of Domestic and Landscape Architecture and the School of Fine Arts at Fontainebleau, France. Following their wedding in Massachusetts and honeymoon in Charleston, Prentice and Helen moved into a new house in Venezia Park. Helen took part in ladies' social events, served on civic committees, and sponsored the Campfire Girls. Later in their careers, they moved to Sarasota to work with architect Clarence Martin. After World War II, they moved to the San Francisco area. A Venice Park was named after French to honor his work for the city. The city constructor, George A. Fuller Company of Chicago and New York. Fuller was given blanket contracts by George Webb. The company was to build hotels, pavements, sewerage, sidewalks, and streets. Frank Warren was the general superintendent of construction for Fuller. Fuller Construction buildings housed supplies, materials, cars, trucks, and tractors. Bunkhouses were built as well as 8-room company homes, providing 2 rooms for each family. The complex was located northeast of where St. Augustine Street and Nokomis Avenue met. Thousands of workers were needed to build Venice, but there was no place to house them. To remedy this, Fuller Construction established a camp south of Hatchett's Creek and called it Tent City. Local black residents lived, apparently, in Laurel, in what generally was called Albee's Quarters, west of the seaboard tracks, or at the Turpentine Camp, black housing, or Turpentine Quarters. Pete Edge was hired to manage construction crews. Thousands of black and white workers were on the payroll. He was 6.5 feet tall and was armed. He told Sheriff L.D. Hodges to stay out of the quarters. That was mine to tend to. Although he tried to stop many fights, he only killed 2 during the time he managed. He also acted as the doctor of the camp, getting syringes and vaccine from Dr. J.R. Scully, county health officer. This map shows John Nolan's plans for farms and dairy, the gray area a few miles east of downtown Venice. Note the 9-hole golf course, site of present Venice Shopping Center and Country Club Estates Mobile Home Park. Gulf View and Venezia Park were for upper and middle class buyers. Edgewood, originally located out of the city, was set aside for rank and file. Northern Italian-style home designs were reviewed by Walker and Gillette of New York, who were the supervising architects. The local agent was Howard Patterson. Walker and Gillette also designed the new Seaboard Airline Station, which John Nolan had recommended to move to the current site. Historic neighborhoods. The Apartment District. The Edgewood District. Affordable housing for the BLE engineers. Eagle Point. And not shown, just south, is Venezia Park. When the BLE Realty went bust, they had accomplished 3 hotels with 240 rooms, over 200 commercial and residential structures, 141 apartments, 83 stores, 13 miles of hard surface roads, 10.5 miles of paved streets, 5 miles of graded roads, almost 15 miles of sidewalks and 20 miles of curbing, 13 miles of water pipes, 7 miles of underground sewers, 40 miles of drainage canals, water plants containing 500,000-gallon reservoir and a 100,000-gallon elevated tank. The BLE initiated Venice because of a $4 million loss in investment. The Venice project cost them between $16 million and $18 million. They bought at the height of the real estate peak, spent lavishly, and tried to sell when the real estate market tanked. It would have taken a town or city government many years to accomplish what the BLE did within a 2-year period. The Kentucky Military Institute, or KMI. Late spring of 1932, J.H. Scott of the BLE, Ralph Caples, Vice President of the Atlantic Coast Line Railroad, and Colonel R.B. Richard of the KMI came to the mostly deserted Venice and made a deal that would bring the KMI cadets to Venice for their winter campus. The KMI breathed life back into Venice with dress parades, sports events, and a payroll that employed hundreds during the Depression. Hotel Venice was opened again, and the KMI slogan graced her patio, "Character makes the man." More on the Kentucky Military Institute later. This walk is in downtown Venice, starting at Centennial Park, bordering on West Venice Avenue, just west of Nokomis Avenue. The town of Venice, incorporated in 1925 in a special session of the Florida legislature, even before the land was cleared. Governor John Martin appointed the first mayor of Venice, Edward L. Ned Worthington. The Venice councilmen were Ralph Welliver, Charles Brearley, and Bud Wimmers, all BLE development officials. In 1927, Venice became a city. Our walk will start at the Venice Centennial Park gazebo. We'll just make sure of the attendance. If you're not here, please raise your hand. All right, I don't see any hands raised, so we're ready to go. We'll walk out of the gazebo towards Tampa Avenue. Let's turn right and walk up to Nokomis Avenue. While we are walking, we will notice the old San Marco Hotel, aka the KMI building, aka the Venice Center Mall. About midway of the San Marco Hotel, Sarasota County placed a marker honoring the Kentucky Military Institute, the military school with a winter home in sunny Florida. On January 5, 1933, 1,500 people welcomed the first KMI contingent of students, faculty, and staff. The colorful Sunday dress parades held on the parade grounds quickly became a favorite attraction for residents and tourists. The cadet band and the Kentucky Rifles, a precision drill platoon, also participated. The Sweetheart Parade, held close to Valentine's Day, honored 5 local young ladies, each sponsored by one of the 5 cadet corps. Across from the San Marco Hotel, the KMI cadets are marching on the parade ground, now Centennial Park, in the parking lot. More of the KMI cadets on parade. We have arrived at the corner of Tampa and Nokomis Avenues. Across the street, we see the current Venice Theater. This building was originally constructed to house a gasoline filling station, car storage garage, and 5 storefront shops. The Orange Blossom Filling Station, storage garage, and store. It was completed in the summer of 1927. Advertisements in the Venice News, the local paper, state that it housed the repair shop and the Sinclair gasoline and oil station of J. Harris Jones. In 1939, the Kentucky Military Institute purchased the nearby garage and converted it to a gymnasium with basketball courts, wrestling, and boxing arenas. It housed the headquarters for the military department of the school, as well as an armory and chapel. The KMI had an excellent basketball team, and there was a spirited rivalry with local schools. These exhibition games were well attended and were a draw for the community during the winter. After World War II, regular Army officers were assigned by the War Department to conduct a 4-year ROTC program out of this building. In 1972, following the demise of the KMI, the building was purchased by the community-based Venice Little Theater organization and remodeled as a performance venue. In 2008, the Venice Little Theater became the Venice Theater. When remodeled, the tower was built to look something like the train depot tower. Let's cross the street at the crosswalk safely and make our way to the San Marco building. This intersection has a lot of traffic. Be careful when you cross. Now, let's turn left and continue to the San Marco. You'll notice the arched balcony on the 3rd floor of the San Marco building. From here, visitors in 1926 and 1927 could see the Seaboard train terminal before it was moved to the present site in April 1927, and the Fuller's Army buildings. Cross the street and we'll enter the San Marco building further up and to the right. Time to enter the building. You can see that there are several storefronts, and in this case, a restaurant, the French Bistro. No, you don't have time to get a croissant and coffee. As we turn into the main hallway, you can start seeing the information and displays about the San Marco and the KMI. What a beautiful hallway. From 1973 to 1975, it was renovated into the Venice Center with residential units on the upper floors and retail units on the ground floor. In 2010, it was listed on the National Register of Historic Places. From 2019 to 2020, the exterior and the interior grand hallway was renovated. The KMI in Venice from 1933 to 1970 exhibit opened in 2020, made possible by KMI Alumni Association and Charles Alex Hodgkin, class of 1949, a former instructor who served in the military school's director of admissions, then as the last commandant of cadets from 1965 to 1971. Host, the Venice Center Association Board of Directors. By 1929, after the exit of the BLE, the population of Venice dwindled to less than 500 people as the city struggled to survive. In 1933, the KMI breathed new life into the discouraged city. Venice soon benefited from the infusion of funds spent by the newcomers and their visiting families and friends. The cadets often had the attention of many young ladies in Venice, which created competition with boys from local schools. Rivalries over girls and sports led to heated confrontations on occasion. Part of the attraction of enrolling in the Kentucky Military Institute was the winter session offered in Florida. Sports could be played during the winter months, and the school's proximity to Venice Beach allowed for many hours of fun and camaraderie to be spent on the sand and in the Gulf. The cadets and faculty had access to a swimming pool, a clubhouse, and country club situated on a 9-hole golf course, and use of a large bathhouse, no longer in existence, at the beach less than a mile away. Starting up again, you two, stop the chit-chat and catch up with us. To the right, we see a stairway and elevator to the 2nd and 3rd floors. To the left is another entrance or exit to or from the building. Continuing, please keep up. A KMI in memory of poster of outstanding cadets. Some KMI alumni include Jim Backus, Victor Mature, Danny Sullivan, and Fred Willard. The Kentucky Military Institute was founded in 1845 near Frankfort, Kentucky. In 1896, they moved to Linden, Kentucky. They started their Florida winter campus at O'Galley near Melbourne in 1906. After fires at both Linden and O'Galley, the KMI went bankrupt in 1921. 4 years later, the KMI started operations again and in 1932 scouted Florida for a new winter home. They leased the Hotel Venice, the San Marco Hotel, and the annex between them from the BLE. 7 years later, the KMI purchased the buildings and added the Orange Blossom Garage, which they converted to a gymnasium and armory. Because of anti-war sentiments during the Vietnam War, enrollments decreased and the KMI stopped their winter trips to Florida and closed down in 1971. We are getting closer to the end of the hallway. See the case with the cadet uniforms and the video of the KMI constantly playing. A display window of memorabilia of cadet classes, honors, and events. The San Marco Hotel building was built in 1926 by the BLE for an estimated cost of $300,000. As a fireproof building with reinforced concrete and steel, the strongest structure in Venice at the time. The building's Mediterranean Revival-style architecture was designed by Franklin O. Adams, president of Florida State Association of Architects, and the general contractor was R.W. Wishart, both from Tampa. The hotel opened after only 90 days of construction with space for 13 shops on the ground floor and 92 rooms on the 2 floors above. The building's life as a hotel was short-lived. By 1928, the San Marco was unable to survive the financial failure of the BLE and the Great Depression the following year. The empty hotel took on new life as an academic building and barracks when the Kentucky Military Institute leased it. The ground floor was used for classrooms, a lounge area, and offices, while the top floors were quarters for the cadets each furnished with twin beds including box springs and mattress, steam heat, electric fan, and private bathroom. Here are some of the 1927 ads for businesses located in the San Marco Hotel. We're ready to leave the lovely San Marco building. Please exit and turn right along Tampa Avenue. Between the San Marco Hotel and the Hotel Venice is the Annex building, which served the KMI as a nurses' station and infirmary. Another view of the Annex. Coming up is the driveway to the front of the Hotel Venice. This building is an active assisted living center. Visitors have to register to gain access. For now, we will take a look at the entrance and later the back courtyard, where we will get a few sneak peeks. The entrance looks much like it did in 1926, when it welcomed guests to Venice, offering dinner and dance parties. Let's get back to our walk, which is proceeding down Tampa Avenue. A plaque is on the wall to the right. The Hotel Venice was built in 1926 for $500,000 as the centerpiece of the BLE's Venice and took only 3 months to build. It was designed by Leon Gillette of New York in the Northern Italian Renaissance style. The manager of the hotel was Charles P. Kane of Cleveland. The KMI occupied the building as a winter school for the cadets and faculty in 1932 and used it until 1970. In 1981, the building was purchased by Far South Developers, Inc. The exterior of the building was restored and the interior renovated for use as a retirement residence known as Casa de Venice. In 1988, the Adult Care Management Corporation bought the building and renamed it Park Place. Since that time, the name has been changed to Somerville in Venice, Summit at Venice, and now the Venice Center for Independent and Assisted Living. The Hotel Venice was placed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1984 and was the first building in the city of Venice to be listed. The plaque was placed here by the Venice Area Historical Society in 2002. Here we are at the corner of Tampa Avenue and Nassau Street, where we will turn right to see the back courtyard of the Hotel Venice. Walking north on Nassau Street. Here is the Orange Grove patio outside of the dining hall. The first year of Hotel Venice's existence, the Venice Company put on dances at least twice a week. The Orange Grove patio just outside the dining hall had mature orange trees growing there. To dress it up, lights in the shape of oranges would be put through the trees, an orchestra would play music, and dancing would commence. The Hotel Venice would get people from Sarasota, Bradenton, and sometimes Tampa for these events. There were also tea dances in the afternoon. The Venice Company listed the dances at the Orange Grove as the 21st thing to do out of 100 Venice events. Here is the exterior entrance to the Hotel Venice dining room. We are approaching the back entrance and courtyard of the Hotel Venice. A newspaper clipping of the building of the Hotel Venice. The hotel was used for offices, prospective buyers, and publicists expensively housed and commuted in from Sarasota. The KMI converted the hotel to administration and classroom building. It also included the recreation hall, reception lounges, library, kitchen, and dining hall. The second and third floors had living quarters for faculty, students, and staff. The landscaping was designed around an original fountain design by Harold Heller, who assisted Prentice French, the landscape designer. Hotel Venice created an environment of grand elegance and welcomed prospective buyers. Hotel Venice was the center of social life in Venice, the venue of BLE-sponsored parties and fine dining, and was the Venice Company headquarters. Today's courtyard and back entrance. A dinner party at the acclaimed Hotel Venice courtyard. For the KMI cadets, a regulated social life was encouraged. Dances, teas, receptions, and concerts were held for cadets, their families, and friends in the reception lobby of the former Hotel Venice. This was also the ever-popular meeting place for cadets in the early evenings after dinner. A young woman invited to a formal military ball at the KMI would have to meet the approval of the school's president. The young ladies were escorted by chaperones to and from the dance, and no cadet or his date were allowed to leave the building during the event. Dances outside of the school were taboo for the cadets. The dining room was on the first floor of this wing of the hotel. From the Sarasota Herald, dated 1st of October 1926, the lobby is a beautiful room, restful in character and of Italian design to harmonize with the architecture of the hotel. The lobby has a beamed ceiling and a tile floor. Hey, those aren't the residents, they're part of the tour group. Hey guys, let's get on with the walk. The lobby and fireplace of 1926 versus today's look. The lobby and reading room. In the Hotel Venice, the dining room was 69 by 38 feet, with cypress beamed ceiling and terrazzo floor. The guests dined on fresh Gulf seafood and beef from the local cattle barons. Here are members of the kitchen staff of the Hotel Venice in 1926. Giant copper pans and crockery are visible. The refrigerator was the size of a railroad boxcar. The hotel also had a bakery, ice machines, and laundry facilities. The chef, James N. Kalar, was French-born, the son of a Greek mother and French father. He offered French, Greek, Eastern, and American cuisine. He had also been chef at the Waldorf in Cleveland. Here's a Hotel Venice barbershop. Looks like a shave was $1. A manicurist waits in the background. Time to get back on the trail, back to the Nassau Street sidewalk. Walking back to Centennial Park. Back to the corner of Nassau Street and Tampa Avenue. Please cross the street with care. Centennial Park has a kids' fountain for the hot days. Centennial Park also has a restroom. Let's continue on. Across the street once sat the Venice Nokomis Bank, which we will talk about a little later. Almost to the corner of Venice Avenue and Nassau Street. On the corner is another Sarasota County marker about Venice. It states John Nolan's original plan included wide paved boulevards with planted medians, small parks throughout the community, a golf course, a beachfront amphitheater, lots reserved for schools and hotels, as well as an agricultural area known as Venice Farms. In addition to what we have already covered, it states, Venice lay dormant for years with Dr. Albee's Florida Medical Center, Kentucky Military Institute, and the Venice Farms providing the only economic life during the 1930s. The city came to life again with the creation of an Army air base during World War II. The Ringling Brothers Circus relocated their winter home here in 1960. Let's look at the older business buildings on Venice Avenue. First, let's walk up to Nokomis Avenue and then back this way. Try to keep up. I know I'm walking fast. We're at the intersection of Nokomis and West Venice Avenues. Here is a picture of this strip of West Venice Avenue and Miami Avenue, which is a street away. I'll identify the buildings that I have numbered and will discuss in more detail later. 1. The Schoolcraft Building. 2. The Boissevin Building. 3. The Sarasota Bronx Building. 4. The Nickel Building. 5. The Ennis Arcade. And 6. The Saunders Building. The Schoolcraft Building on the corner of Venice Avenue and Nokomis Avenue. The Johnson Schoolcraft Building was completed in October 1926 at a cost of $45,000. It was built to have retail space below and apartments on the second floor. The Venice Pharmacy leased the first floor space and in 1927 had a long-term contract with the Rexall Drug Company. The local phone company operated a switchboard from a rear storefront for a period of time. In the days before radio dispatch patrol cars, citizens would phone the operator to relay a message to the police. The operator turned a red light on, which was installed on the roof and was visible for many blocks. The patrol car would see it and arrive to retrieve the message from the operator. An ad from the Sarasota Herald dated 27 March 1927. The Venice Pharmacy, whose proprietor was John DeBerry, had mahogany fixtures with black walnut finish, a pink onyx soda fountain counter, round eating tables, and triangular-shaped seats. The Boissevin Building. The Boissevin Building was the first commercial building constructed in Venice other than the hotels. It was completed in August of 1926 and built of hollow clay tile and brick with steel reinforced beams. It housed 2 retail stores on the first floor and several offices on the second floor. The original stores were Venice Hardware and Dawson Furniture. The offices of Venice's first newspaper, the Venice News, were also located in this building. A billiard hall was planned for the upper floor. The Sarasota Bronx Building. Originally a 2-story building sitting on 3 lots, the Sarasota Bronx Building has been divided in half. It is sometimes called the Shaw Building because the Shaw's 5, 10, and 25-cent store was the first to occupy the space. The building has been used as a hardware store, a library, an Episcopal mission, and the Venetian Cleaners. Changes to the building have hidden the original windows and doors. Both sides of the building have gone through changes required by the Architectural Review Board. In 1990, the eastern half put in ceramic tiles under the storefront windows, earth tone roof tiles, and stucco relief details. The western half added a canopy over the city sidewalk. The only architectural feature that has survived is the shed tile roof on the street facade. The Nickel Building, designed by Guy Johnson. The Nickel Building was built by Carey and Walters of Plant City at a cost of $22,000. It was built with hollow clay blocks with a red barrel roof tile. The location originally housed Blates of Venice wearing apparel and later Rice's Nestlewood shop. The Ennis Arcade. Completed in January of 1927 by the George Fuller Construction Company at a cost of $125,000, the Ennis Arcade was owned by the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers Realty Corporation General Manager Stanton Estes. It was built with stucco-covered hollow tile and had green roof tiles. The two-story buildings were connected by an open-ended arcade. The second floor originally housed the Hotel Valencia with rooms facing an open porch. On the first floor there was a hotel lobby and post office and 7 stores, some opening to the arcade. An office of the Florida Power and Light and a newsstand were added by July. The ventilated structures on the roof were part of a solar heating system. In 1938, the hotel was known as El Patio. Besides the stores already mentioned, the ad states the other stores were the Turner Company, a clothing store, the Arcade Barbershop, and the George B. Prime Hardware Store, which opened in March of 1927. The ad also states the building was purchased in 1948 by W. Leslie and Fay W. Miles. 1927 Sarasota Herald ads for 2 businesses located in the Ennis Arcade. El Patio Hotel pictures from July 1998. The Saunders Building. In late 1926, the G.E. Saunders Building was a second commercial business built in Venice and contained a drugstore, barbershop, and haberdashery. The Rendezvous Tea Shop was located there by February of 1927. The owner wanted to be the first merchant of Venice. The Saunders Building was designed by W. H. Shoemaker and built by the Barrett Construction Company, both of Tampa. H. S. Patterson of Walker and Gillette okayed the facade as a decidedly Venetian design. We made it to the corner of Venice Avenue and Nassau Street. Let's continue westward. If we look diagonally across the intersection of Venice Avenue and Nassau Street, we see 3 of the original downtown buildings. The first one is the Blackburn Building. This 2-story Blackburn Building was constructed in the fall of 1926 for $26,000. The ground floor housed 5 stores, including a dentist, Dr. George G. Wheeler. The second floor had 8 efficiency apartments. It was designed by architect J. C. Humphrey of Sarasota in the Northern Italian style, with clay block walls and a red tile roof, and built by J. Franklin Wheeler of Fort Myers. The second notable building is the Estes Building. This was one of several buildings owned by Mr. Estes in Venice. Construction of this building was started in September 1926. By 1927, it was the home of the Venice Stationery Company, Mears Men's Shop, and Latimer and Lee Construction. The Venice Gondolier, the local newspaper, and a radio and TV store called it home in the 1940s. A TV would play in the display window day and night. Radio station WAMR was located on the second floor in the 60s. The Moeller Building. William Moeller owned the building on the right. The J.T. Hardware Company and the Woolard Furniture Company set up shop on the bottom floor in 1927, with rental apartments on the second floor. At a later date, the Venice Electric Supply Company and the Venice Tile Company moved into this building. The northern Italian raised stucco relief is demonstrated on the second floor facade. In the 2000 Millennium Reproduction edition of the Venice News dated Friday, June 3, 1927, it states in 1984, a men's and women's shoe store moved in. Now it's time to refocus and continue our walk down Venice Avenue. The corner we are looking at was the location of the Venice Nokomis Bank. This picture shows the Venice Nokomis Bank in which Dr. Fred Albee was president. The new $75,000 building was constructed by L.W. Greening and contained 160 safety deposit boxes in its Mosler model vault. The bank building contained other businesses such as the Venice Beauty Parlor. The Venice Theater building and the Parkview Hotel also are visible. In February of 1927, the majority of stock in the Venice Nokomis Bank was bought by Sarasota interests, and the 2-year-old bank was moved from Nokomis, site of the later Grosjean clock repair shop, on the Tamiami Trail to the corner of Venice Avenue and Nassau Street in Venice. Dr. Fred Albee continued as president of the bank, while Joe Gill, president of the Bank of Sarasota, became chairman of the board. BLE officers George Webb, W.B. Prenter, and L.G. Griffin were added to the board, and James Blaylock became cashier. Another view of the bank and Venice Theater. And a color view. The next building, which houses the Bank of America, used to be the location of the Venice Theater in 1927. At the new Venice Theater in July of 1927, 35 cents for adults, 15 cents for children, a special wire from Tampa brought the broadcast of the Jack Dempsey Sharkey bout to Venice. The ticker tape was read by an announcer, and a huge crowd roared after each round of the Dempsey victory. It was, the news reported, the largest crowd ever to attend a performance here. Later, the theater was renamed the Gulf Theater. In February of 1927, the Venice pharmacy proprietor, John DeBerry, put in a soda grill in the theater lobby. He offered the following popular candy brands: Nunnally's, Whitman's, Jacobs, Johnston's, and Hollingston's. This is more of the Bank of America building complex on Venice Avenue. The Estes Theater Complex was designed by Harrison Bell and built by Newport Estes of Orlando for $175,000. The complex covered 4 lots, the Venice Theater occupying the far right unit. The whole complex was raised in 1969. Here's the Gulf Theater building color postcard. Ah yes, and here's the Venice Post Office, the location of the 1926 Parkview Hotel. The Parkview Hotel was the second hotel built by the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers. They hoped that it could be finished before the BLE convention in November of 1926, but was finished after the convention. It reused the same design as the Hotel Venice. The main difference was that it was fronted by an arcade. It took 4 months to build and cost $500,000. In July of 1927, the roof garden and deck above the arcade was the scene of Saturday night dances, cooled by breezes blown directly from the Gulf. In December of 1926, a U.S. Weather Bureau was added, which was only the 6th in Florida. The Bureau was to include an 18-foot tower, instruments, and recording equipment. The Parkview Hotel dining area. The Parkview Hotel lounge. When Fred Albee sold his land in 1925 to the BLE, he secured terms of payment by mortgages. In 1934, he assigned these mortgages to his Venice Nokomis Holding Corporation. When the BLE failed to make payments, the holding company foreclosed. The holding company received back 400 acres in the heart of the city and 40-plus acres near Curry Creek. Excluded from this return were certain lots and subdivisions of Venetia Park, Edgewood, and Gulfview, and the streets and alleys in the city of Venice. In 1933, Dr. Fred Albee bought the Park View Hotel at a very reasonable price and started a private general hospital, the Florida Medical Center. Later, it was converted into a volunteer hospital, chartered to permit all hospital functions, and a postgraduate medical teaching institute. The center attracted patients for treatment and surgery from 35 states and 5 foreign countries. The center occupied an annex of 5 buildings. The nurses' home and convalescent and family facilities were housed in the bungalow court apartments. Some nurses lived on the second floor of the center. The hospital included a pool and therapeutic facilities. Albee divided his time between the New York Ruptured and Crippled Hospital and the Florida Medical Center. In 1942, during World War II, the Florida Medical Center became a U.S. Army hospital. Dr. Albee died in 1945 before the hospital reverted back to civilian use. Years later, the medical center was converted back to a hotel, the Gulf Breeze Hotel. It was torn down in the 1960s to make way for the Venice Post Office. Acknowledgements. The BLE era Venice. The first part of this walk has come to a close. In the second part of the walk, we'll explore the Venice City Hall, Heritage Court, select homes along West Venice Avenue, the Venice Beach Pavilion, the Lord Heigl House, John Nolan Park, the apartment district, and buildings on Ponce de Leon and Miami Avenue. Thank you for coming on this walk, and we hope to see you next time.